Hello, I'm excited to be here. This is Gathering Places and Creative Conversations, which is a three-part virtual series that explores the intersections of urban life, placemaking, and artistic expression. My name is Madeline Spencer. I'm the co-ed director of Placemaking US. And in this program, you are going to hear nationally acclaimed creative placemakers and Portland area placemaking grantees who will share their inspiration, artistic journeys, and unique challenges of working with community spaces. In collaboration with Placemaking US, Gathering Places is co-presented and sponsored by the Community Placemaking Program of Metro, the Greater Portland Area's regional government that serves 24 cities and 3 counties in Oregon. Our esteemed guests come from diverse disciplines within the creative placemaking realm, including arts federations, urban design, community arts, and more. The Gathering Places Creative Conversation Series not only celebrates the vast spectrum of artistic practices, but also aims to demystify the creative process in placemaking for the audience, offering a deep dive into the dedication required for a life in the realm of creative placemaking. The series shines a spotlight on Portland's flourishing creative community, fostering a deeper appreciation for centering the arts within its urban landscape. Each event will conclude with a lively conversation, and it's free and open to the public. Next up, we have Dana Lucero.
Thanks, Madeline. And really, thank you everybody for being here. My name is Dana Lucero. I use she, her pronouns, and I manage Metro's Community Placemaking Grant Program, which we've been having since 2017. I'm going to share a few slides just to orient those folks, even who are in our region, who may not be familiar with your regional government, but especially for visitors. And so Metro actually, in the 1950s, there was a real need to provide or recognize need to provide region-wide planning and coordination in a way that manages growth and infrastructure. The area's really critical farms and forest lands were being threatened with urbanization. And there wasn't a good way to coordinate regional services across jurisdictional boundaries. So Metro was created. It is actually the only directly elected regional government in the US. And we have one of our counselors here with us today. We serve more than 1.7 million people in Portland and the 23 surrounding cities and 3 counties. It's a little unusual. And I'll also refer to this area that you see is where eligible grant projects for our program can come from. We have a directly elected council. And we also manage various things that really do cross regional boundaries. We have performance venues, we manage the garbage and solid waste and recycling streams. We have a series of robust parks and nature areas, but the placemaking program actually grew out of our land use and planning departments. And what the community placemaking program does is it supports equity-centered, community-led arts and culture efforts that strengthen people's connections to each other and the places that they care about. It was created in recognition of all of the things that we do to plan for a healthy region. To have a program whose explicit outcome is about building human and social capital is a missing ingredient, or I would say a missed opportunity. And this program attempts to really address that. Placemaking can mean lots of different things to folks, and I think that is okay. But in the role of government, it's really, really essential that we are looking at programs that are just coming from the community. We're not deciding whether something needs to change or be safeguarded. By funding grants that come from community, we ensure really that we're trusting that community knows what it needs for itself, and it's government's responsibility to support that. Since 2017, when we started the program, we've awarded just about $1.5 million. So it's not a huge program, despite having a very high demand for it. This year, we actually are growing the pot of available funding from $200,000 to $450,000 in grants. Really exciting. Folks can ask for between $5,000 and $25,000 in grants, and we don't require any matching funding. So it makes it kind of a unique funding opportunity. Like I said, the grants all of the activities must take place in the Portland area region. And we're coming up on a grant cycle. So we will open the applications on August 9th. And they will close on October 4th at noon. And during that time, we'll have a lot of information sessions. Folks can contact me for questions. Yeah, that's an exciting and busy time. So one last thing on the placemaking program before I turn it over to our much more interesting speakers. This is where you go if you're curious about learning more about the program. My contact information appears on this slide. We'll have the updated handbook. Everything's just about to be fresh, hot off the presses. We'll have the 2025 application handbook posted in July. That's also where you'll go to find a link to the online application. We'll have recorded information sessions there, as well as links to the ones that will happen in August and September. And then you can see like what we've funded before, read some really great engaging stories. So do please contact me after this session if you have any questions or ideas for the proposal and you happen to be located in our area. And with that, I'm very honored to introduce Metro Councilor Christine Lewis, a longtime supporter and participant in the program, just to kick us off before our speakers. So again, thank you so much for being here.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dana. And thank you everybody for attending. I am just delighted to get to help champion the work that Metro has done in the national context of placemaking and frankly, placekeeping. Our work in government goes hand in hand with community-driven efforts, and it is very rare that a municipality can get down to the neighborhood scale in the way that placemaking grants can. So our opportunity to go out and not only fund these creative expressions and these leadership development opportunities is making a real difference in the communities that we fund, but it's also making a difference to our planning department. You know, Dana's a planner. She works alongside dozens of other planners, and getting to review everything that comes in, we can get a pulse and a sense of what's happening in pockets of our community. So we've been able to fund really diverse projects. I've been involved 6 cycles now. We've had a program for less than a decade. I've been there for most of it. And some of my, you're not allowed to have favorite projects, right? Like you don't have favorite children. But projects that stand out in my mind, we funded a podcast, Art Talk Bus Stop, that was just a wonderful expression, all driven and created by youth. We made investments in the Muslim Educational Trust's art collaborative that really streamlined community engagement alongside a major transportation and infrastructure investment, Southwest Corridor. We've been able to do more creative expressions through the marketplace, like the Indigenous marketplace that we've helped fund. So the opportunity is pretty wide open for what is creative expression. We've had healers, we've had marketplaces, we've had festivals, and some years festivals are more popular. After COVID, they were less popular. But the opportunity to bring people together in either really large or really small cohorts and learn from each other and have the planners learn from Dana which parts of our community need not only the investment, but need to be listened to as we develop anti-displacement strategies, as we develop investment opportunities, as we manage the assets we do directly control as government. So to folks who are out there wondering how, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 makes a difference, these small size grants are acting, we're acting like a creative funder. We're not acting like government when we do these grants. And sometimes that means we're cutting through the 20-page application and we're just asking some basic questions. And if you don't traditionally fill out paperwork, we're happy to work with you on a video application. We want to meet community where they're at. So I think the opportunity to be a collaborative funder is something Metro's tried to rise to the occasion. We're always interested in learning more. I'm excited to learn from the national best practices some of you are pioneering and working on yourselves. So Delighted by this series, and I will hand it back to folks who have so much to share.
Thank you. Okay, so first up today, we have LeJuano Varnell from Atlanta, Georgia, who is the executive director of Sweet Auburn Works, Inc. And I've had the pleasure of getting to walk the streets of New York with you not too long ago, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about his work. Sweet Auburn Works is an organization that's dedicated to preserving and enhancing the commercial and cultural legacy of the Sweet Auburn Historic District. And under LeJuano's leadership, Sweet Auburn Works launched the Heroes Walk, which is a 1.1 mile curated pedestrian experience that features new public art, playscapes, canopy, and wayfinding. The Heroes Walk highlights over 100 years of African-American commercial and civic success, including the establishment of the country's first African-American-owned radio station, Word Radio, and the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King. Sweet Auburn Works aims to make Sweet Auburn a favorite destination in Atlanta, showcasing its rich history and vibrant community. Take it from there.
Thanks, Madeline, and good afternoon, everybody. Again, I'm LeJuano Varnell. I'm with Sweet Auburn Works. We're a Main Street program. We're a Main Street program in Atlanta that believes in using preservation and economic development to revitalize and uplift cultural heritage in neighborhoods in place. So I'm going to show you some slides that Madeline asked me to put together. So she says, can you tell us the journey of Heroes Walk? And boy, can I. It's been fascinating. I'll cut to the chase with you guys. This is, I'm 6 years into the Heroes Walk and trying to make it a thing. And I like hopefully many of you, I started off de novo. I had no idea what I was doing. I knew that I was with an organization that was founded just 12 years ago, and we wanted to use preservation and economic development to solve problems. We wanted to preserve, promote, and revitalize a very important African-American historic district in the Southern United States. And so 2 years in, I realized I had a real problem. Atlanta's not necessarily known for its public transportation, but we do have something called MARTA, which is an east-west and north-south transit line that effectively gets you through the city, mostly, and to the airport. My neighborhood, that's a fairly significant neighborhood, sits on the second least used station in that transit system. But that second least used station was supporting a National Park Service site and this significant historic district we were talking about. So significant that it just happened to not coincidentally be the birthplace of a Dr. King. We are Black Main Street, Black Wall Street. We went through Reconstruction, we went through Jim Crow, we went through civil rights, and we're still here standing. And we thought it made sense to do a better job of trying to get people from this train station to our neighborhood in a 0.4 mile walk. That was the impetus, right? Again, never did any placemaking, never did anything. So I thought, where do we start? Well, let's map out what we have to do. I have to get you from this point here in the south at Decatur Street up to Auburn Avenue, 0.4 miles. And again, it's 700,000 plus people on an annual basis doing this. So where to begin? Ryan, I went to Project for Public Spaces Outside the Box, and I pulled this thing off the internet in 2017. It's still there for those of you who have not decided on using any sort of rubric to do your placemaking initiative. So it works if you care to make it work. I highly recommend it. It has guided us from $0 of effectively managing this to well, I'll tell you at the end of the presentation how much money we've currently raised for the project. So is it really this easy? Is it really just 7 steps? And one of this, I already have the site, so one of the steps is already out of the way. So let's walk through quickly. Find my stakeholders. Let's talk about our challenges. Let's create a workshop. Let's prepare for a workshop. Let's create a workshop. Let's take the ideas that we take from our workshop and put them into action, and let's talk about evaluation and replication. Easy enough. Let's get going. Obviously, you don't know what you don't know, so we just move forward. Here are my stakeholders. These probably don't mean a lot to you, but they're very complicated in this city. The Transit Authority, the City of Atlanta here under my utilities provider, Georgia Power, the Department of the Interior and National Park Service, our housing authority, and a large private developer, all trying to support this emblem we use to describe our Sweet Auburn neighbors, this filigree Sweet Auburn Avenue. Could it be as easy just being the city? Of course not. It's three separate siloed entities within the city: Department of Planning, Department of Parks and Recreation, and Public Works, all needed to be involved as we were planning this. Also, in working with my neighborhood, it's an historically African-American neighborhood. I have to meet people where we are. This is not going to be a digital thing. In 2018, I went to our neighborhood association and I asked for people to raise their hands if they wanted to make walking in their neighborhood better. And people were so enthused to do so. If you look at this really closely, they woke up early 4 consecutive Saturday mornings from February to March. By the way, Atlanta gets cold, people. Just, I know you don't think that, but it was freezing one of those weekends. And I said, bring a pad and pencil, get your phones out, take some pictures, and we're going to talk about, I need you to tell me everything that stinks in walking from this train station to the historic district. And let's think about ways to make it better. So what does that look like? So on the subsequent Saturdays, we get in a room and we chop it up. We throw some ideas up on a screen. We sit here and we literally look bored, thinking critically with bad coffee, trying to figure out how to trying to enhance what we're doing. The bottom picture is a fascinating tool. Georgia Tech, the Georgia Institute of Technology, sits in Atlanta, Georgia. Those guys are the world's most magnificent, for lack of a better word, geeks. This is me getting a chance to use their map room. So what is it? What's a map room? A map room is these said geeks taking a projector, burning some software into it, installing into the ceiling on a track and rail, and allowing you to project any map anywhere on the globe onto some paper, and we can trace and draw and edit it. It was the most fun you've ever had hanging out with this type of geek. It was phenomenal. But this is also this type of support we had. And by the way, what we've done so far hasn't cost us anything, just so you know. So now we've come up with some ideas. We have some thoughts. On the left, you see what it looked like. No wayfinding, a image of Dr. King that sits above a rec center, a lot of Georgia Power power lines, transmission lines going through in the middle of the sidewalk that's supposed to take you to my historic district. And the idea is, well, what can we do to enhance that experience? This was just 1 year in now, guys. People were like, well, what if we had places to sit? What if we put a canopy there so it's not so hot walking from the train station north? What if we colorize the crosswalk so people know there's a sense of place and purpose? We then took those ideas and we did what your planners would do, a charrette. We kind of flipped that concept on its ear. And rather than the city sort of giving us things and saying, put a sticky here and tell us what you'd like to have done, we invited the city to our charrette and we said, put a sticky here and tell us which of these things that we think should be in our neighborhood that you can very quickly do or very easily do or can do because we asked you to, because we woke up early on 5 consecutive Saturdays and knocked this out. And it was a lot of fun. And it was a way of, in my mind, trying to create some normalcy of allowing neighborhoods to be in charge of their own growth and their own experiences. And then we did something like, so $1.89 solar lighting, just to test some, this is our tactical urbanism. This is our guerrilla urbanism. Let's light up to the left on the picture on the right, to the left is a park and tennis courts. Let's just make a path that's lit, that's very well lit all the way from the train station, at least to those courts. It's 300 feet. It cost me $120. It worked for 3 days until they were stolen. But these are the things that happen, right? I mean, it was fun to try, and it was really adorable. And it was so nice, people decided to take it. So that lets you know. Then I said, all right, this is catching on. Maybe we should have a fundraising event. So November 9th, 2019, I'm a year into this. Let's show what we've learned. Let's explore some inexpensive, temporary, semi-permanent, solutions that can enhance the corridor and get people walking north to my neighborhood from the train station. So some of that's stenciling, some of that is showing people our vision on the fences. Some of that's taking some really fun, language. Only an African-American historian could put the dirt, the grit, and the shine. All history matters. It's not all great history, but we'd like to tell our full story. And put this up in the public right of way so that people see we're simply trying to curate this space in a more meaningful way. So now, guys, I think my budget is up to, I spent a few $1,000s at this point, feeding volunteers, printing these things out, creating stencils. I got some kids to stick some cups in the fence that say Sweet Auburn. That's fun. We printed out some flyers, and this is me at the bottom in November again. You see it's chilly in November, begging for money. This is what it looks like to ask for money at a placemaking event, just so you know. For those who haven't done this and the long cycle that it takes, you're in this for the long haul. None of this happens very quickly. You're looking at 3 distinct brands that I had for this. I called it the Sweet Auburn Pedestrian Path. What a dumb name in 2018. We then moved forward to Sweet Auburn Walks, Design, Community, and Art 2019. And then we had a visual for that same thing by 2020. And that was enough to get the attention of some people who thought it was fun and interesting. The president and CEO of the Atlanta History Center sort of pulled us aside and said, look, guys, we have a really interesting opportunity here to now take people's interest in visiting this neighborhood and us curating that visitation in the public right of way by talking about where they've landed, what's important about it, what's meaningful, why is this hallowed ground to us? And Sheffield, many of you may know the CEO of the Atlanta History Center, really inspired us to think larger and set us on a path for a capital campaign that then put us in a position to build a budget on what it would look like to enhance our sidewalks and have a small budget for public art, have a small budget for wayfinding and signage, for additional lighting that was under maintenance, for landscape in the public right of way, and even some street furniture. We put a budget in place, we took it to market with the philanthropic community. And the next thing you know, we've got one of our large landscape architects in the city to help us think through now what this thing could really look like. This wasn't cheap. This was over $150,000 to get a full design schematic in 2022. This was funded through our development authority, but only with the assistance from our philanthropic consultants on the path to raising more money. Back home in Mississippi, we say a thing that we'll say 10 will get you 20. In this case, 100 got us a lot more. 150 got us just north of $2.5 million so far to begin to realize this. And the realization of that dream brought in even better landscape architect, better contextualization of our culture in the public right of way, better implementation, linearly on the sidewalks, in trying to express subliminally what our culture could feel like when someone landed in our neighborhood on the way to our permanent important historical features. And as of 2024, with a few more, with some additional investment, we've now got a design that you won't be able to see. I can tell you a little bit more about it, but imagine now you've got a landscape architect who's walking through my neighborhood, who's thinking about the existing architectural design, the existing colors, the existing feel, and using that in a repetitive pattern, repetitive imagery that sits in our crosswalks, that adorns our garbage cans, that wraps our buildings, that occupies our fences, that goes in my banners. All of these things we already do a little bit, but without a cohesive theme. And then the star of the show, this little thing here, this digital kiosk that tells you a bit about our history, that informs you about our economic development activities, that we can continually update with new information as it relates to, low-hanging fruit, Black History Month. But if there are events in the neighborhood, if we want to do a special event for Historic Preservation Month, for Women's History Month, doesn't matter. We've got continually updatable content and information that inspires visitors in the neighborhood. We've even, we're scoping out an amenity zone sidewalk pattern that's lower maintenance, higher visibility, speaks to our historic pavers that we used to have in the neighborhood, but with a little bit more durability further in. So now over 6 years, I can have conversations like that about the things that we're doing in the public right away. We've been exceptional stewards of the little bit of investments that's gone in so far, and we're on a path to renovate now over a full linear mile of repair in kind and replace sidewalking and public space enhancement, and ensuring that there's a narrative to this cultural heritage lens that you see that speaks toward our African American past and what we think the presence of the neighborhood is going to look like. Guys, again, notice we started at 2018, and only by 2024 do I just have a design schematic for this. And we've had a couple of other events, but you get the idea. You never stop. You always stay inspiring. I remind people that a lot of our job is to inspire hope in these processes, that you're going to get the execution right, but you'll bang your head against the wall, you'll drop the ball, something will mess up, you'll wish you had more money, you'll never have enough money. I can't stress that enough. And someone's always going to ask one more question than you have an answer to. How is all this going to be maintained? Someone asked me that again. I've got a plan for it, but just know that'll come up. So I'm here to share with you guys very personal, tangible experiences over the last 6 years in doing this. And I hope in the Q&A you ask me some really hard questions, or some questions that are burning, or some questions that you want to tell your board or your community members or your fundraisers, that I can help tell you how we answered, and how we continue to answer and continue to move this forward. One of the most interesting investments you're going to make, and you see this video I have queued up, is in trying to inspire people to own this process in the community. Now, you guys saw we started very early, where I put it in the hands of my community members to go out and tell me how to make this thing better. We then went back to the community and got their voices, got their video, got their thoughts on what it was we were protecting and why we were protecting it. So Ryan, if you don't mind, I'm going to show you 2 quick minutes of another investment we made just to ensure that this community really owned this thing and people understood how important it was to us to embark on this project. And by the way, the video does not mention the project once. It mentions what people are proud about this neighborhood.
In the day, Sweet Auburn was not back. It was where all Black business was done, from Alonzo Herndon's barbershop down here to Atlanta Lights down there to the Royal Peacock, all the restaurants.
I mean, you name it, businesses, whatever you could name, those are all in.
I used to like going to the movie theater. Yates and Milton was the best place to go get ice cream, and there was a YMCA right up the street here. They used to have dances in the evening for kids and teenagers to go.
I am fourth generation owner of House Restaurant and Lounge. The lounge has been in my family for over 50 years. It's a blues and jazz kind of spot. Growing up, I would be in there with my grandmother. It smelled like fried chicken, and they'd be playing the blues on the weekend. And so now it's mine to continue.
A lot of people move over here because they like the housing, but they don't want to understand the history of the neighborhood. They're new to the neighborhood, new to Atlanta.
And so there's been a transition going on here for, I feel like, about 25 years. And that's a long time for a transition to happen. The new community hasn't really developed, so it's like, what is the future of the area? This is a huge tourist attraction. It's like one of the main reasons people come downtown, come to the city, they go to the King Center, and then they come down 2 blocks from the King Center. It's like, what in the world's going on?
This is our history that's right here on this street. The people understand what the history of this street is and the neighborhood. They would be more appreciative, but we don't have no one to tell them.
Trying to just Auburn Avenue and streets like Auburn Avenue and African American business districts around the country are going to be what they were and even taking it beyond that. It's going to be necessary, first of all, unify, come together and put our nickels and dimes together. That's what our ancestors did. We have to find a way, working with the city, general marketing, Central Atlanta Progress, to make sure that Sweet Auburn is a must-see stop for everybody that comes to town.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that from their mouths. What it is we're protecting and why we spent the last 6 years putting this project together. Now, I end every presentation of this project by, if you feel like you would like to support or help, please email me directly. And if you want to call me, I'll give you my number directly, and we can talk about ways that we can use your skill set and your resource and your assistance to help us link literally the last 100 years of history to the future of this place and help us fulfill our mission as we keep this commercial corridor moving forward. And that's all I've got, guys.
Thank you, LeJuano. I have to say that some of the most amazing things that really tell us a lot about placemaking has to do with that iterative design process that you shared over 2018 to 2024, your lighter, quicker, cheaper interventions like putting on lights along the street and then even having them stolen, and then even the ground up community process, which is really awesome. And I love the idea of telling politicians and folks to come in and actually, instead of putting dots, showing you what they could do to help you. And then also how the fundraising efforts ramped up and how the vision is still becoming full and fully realized. It's really awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, so our next up is Dr. Clarice Bailey from Portland, Oregon. From Passon Art, she is the managing director, and Passon Art is the oldest producing Black theater in Portland, Oregon, where Dr. Bailey helped found the organization over 40 years ago, and in 2022 became the managing director that joins Jerry Foster, the artistic director, who has been there since 1995, to lead the company in a time of considerable promise and forward movement. Dr. Bailey holds a PhD in public administration and policy from Portland State University with a concentration in justice and organizational development. She's a trained practitioner and an instructor in conflict resolution, peer change and transition, and she holds the National Peer Support Specialist certification from Mental Health America and is an affiliate faculty at St. Joseph's University, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where she teaches organizational change, culture, and leadership. She is the co-founder of the Girls Justice League and a female-identified activist and advocacy organization, and finally is a certified yoga and mindfulness instructor. Dr. Bailey employs a liberation framework and instructional design methodology that's informed by historic trauma, abolitional pedagogies, economic equality, and self-determination. Dr. Bailey, please.
It sounds so much.
A lifetime of beautiful work, it sounds like.
Thanks. I appreciate that. You know, I don't think about it like that very often, and so I'm grateful. So I'm here as a representative of a bunch of people of Pasadena Theater Company. And LeJuano, I just want to say that I was so with your presentation. It was so wonderful. I had an opportunity to take that walk, not having any idea of the work that you were doing there. And so I'm so honored and grateful. Just thank you so much. I'm gonna share my screen and my little slides and see if they cooperate. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You can see them? They're
Yes,
good?
looks good.
With classes, with students, right? It's always a crapshoot whether or not the good doctor can figure out how to do the technology. So cool. So Pasadena Theater Company has, as in the introduction, we've been around for quite a minute. We have a good long history here in Portland. We started in 1982. There were 3 kids who thought, you know, we could bring theater. We could, wait a minute, we're in Portland. Folks don't know about Black theater. Folks don't know about either the history of Black theater or the folks that are writing and producing and being on stage as much as should be. I'm obligated to always remind folks that Portland is one of, if not the whitest cities in the country by design. I mean, that was the way our state was formulated. And so to have a group of kids decide that theater and performance art was going to be the way to change that narrative, to impact what was a not so wonderful, right? An icky history. We started, our very first performance was in a community center that was a boxing place that, you know, people came and sat in little folded chairs. And then from there, we moved into a space that the city provided, created the Interstate Firehouse Cultural Center. So this old firehouse that was redone. And to hear Jerry tell the stories, we were sweeping and making sure that the water was on and wiping the windows. And at that point, because there were so few people doing the work, we did it all. We sewed, we constructed sets, we raised the kids, we did it all. Another piece though that can't be unsaid is that at that time in Portland, there were maybe 3 or 4 companies, Black companies that were doing theater or doing dance or right, that were in the performing arts. All of that maybe came up to 12 or 15 people in reality. So we were always also in each other's productions and we were, right, that was the beginning. Every one of these people that are on this photo probably at the same time were directing a show, in another show, constructing a set on for another show. And that was good, right? That was tremendous. We had the great good fortune of bringing Ntozake Shange to Portland for a conversation because we did her other works. while for colored girls was getting all the national attention. We were doing spell number 7, which is what this is. We were doing a photograph, Lovers in Motion. We were introducing Entezaki Shange to Portland, to the theater folks in Portland. So that's been our legacy. We're the old folks now, right? In theater, hanging out in Portland. But that's our legacy, to bring unknown to Portland artists and writers, and we do it till this day. So in doing it to this day, we continue, right, to bring the folks that we know, we read, we talk about, we are in community with, to the big stage, to the main stage. And so this is just a over 42 years. You know, I can't put every picture up here. So this is just a real quick snapshot of stuff we've done. The last one being this play, Johan, which was an amazing co-production with another theater company here that looked at the relationship between a Black GI and his Japanese wife, which the underbelly of which was very, I don't know, Dana, it was wild, right? The things that we don't think about relationships was there on the stage for people to see. So it's important, I think, to ground in this kind of talking about us like this, because our part in this placemaking world is that in Portland, over the decades, and truly over the entire time that there has been Black folks in Portland, which is always, even though the legislation would suggest that we shouldn't be here, having place is a challenge. When Black folks were here in the very, very early days, we lived by the river, which is prime land now, right? Prime territory. And then we were invited to move on the other side of the river. And then we were invited to, and built up a pretty good Portland version of Wall Street, right? Our Black Wall Street. And then we were moved out a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further. And now Black folks predominantly live way, way, way out, barely in the county by the airport. The majority. That's not to say that in my neighborhood downtown, there's not Black people. There certainly are. But the community has been, the neighborhood has been pretty much deteriorated over the decades. So our placemaking is about using theater to create conditions and conversations for people to examine what it means to live in Portland, Oregon, and therefore in the United States. So in August 2023, after a pretty significant community process, this building that you see on the screen, which had fallen into disrepair, had been kind of brought back, but messy, you know, buildings, cities, messy, was an RFP went out for an organization to take ownership of it. We applied, we didn't get the building. However, in the awarding of the building to Portland Opportunities Industrialization Center, Passionart was named as the lead company, artistic organization, to use the arts to revitalize. This neighborhood was traditionally a Black neighborhood, Albina. This is the Albina Art Center. And I will tell you, when we started Passionart, we lived around the corner from this building. And we would ride our bikes and walk the kids and stop and stare at this building because nobody used it. It just sat there and it was beautiful. And we would just stare and say, if only we could have that building. Just think what we could do. We could have kids programming. We could do all this stuff if we could just have that building, which we never got. But we are now the artists in residence. And so it is our placemaking grant with our partnership with Metro that allows us to use the space in the building for staged readings, for rehearsals, for kids programming. And the piece I want to elevate is the staged readings, because it's the readings that we hope with every bone in our body will bring Black folks from out in the numbers, is what it's called, back into the neighborhood that they have so many memories from, grew up in, and are now displaced. So just imagine my little face, 20-some years old, staring in that window like, I just wanna. And that's what I feel like every time I see it. Our project is called The Community at Play, TCAP. So using staged readings, opening the doors to the community, artists, historians, kids. Our fingers are crossed and our intention is to not only bring people back, but to create opportunities for conversation. And that's been how we've started this thing. That's been the first kind of steps with TCAP, with Metro. We've had a number of staged readings. So we do this piece. We have all these little pieces of passing art. We do this piece or bit, as Jerry would call it, Monday night play readings, where we invite community to come, and these readings are staged, they're rehearsed, they're staged, we pay everybody. And then we have conversations about the significance of the work. And that may be the most important piece of it. So this summer we did, this spring and summer, we did these three, well, summers, it's hot here too. And I didn't make it to but one. And I have to tell you, I went to the meeting, which is a fictionalized representation of a conversation between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, right? So we all sit somewhere in that Martin Luther King, Malcolm X world, whether we're, right? The reading was stunning. That was all very, very fabulous. But the thing that was right, and the reason that we do this, is because in Portland, Oregon, in these days and times, the folks that go to theater are pretty elite. Audiences are predominantly white. And to have a predominant and older, and I can say old, right? So to have a predominantly old white audience hearing this conversation between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and then being in a curated conversation afterwards, their own experiences of being in Portland, of being in an environment where Black folks are marginalized, where brown folks are marginalized. And, both tears and heart and pretty stunning. And that's what we are using our placemaking grant to do, to bring these conversations about race out of underneath the rug and behind the staircase. Because in Portland, people don't talk about race. They don't talk about it boldly. We're very polite in Portland, Oregon. And so using theater and using the arts as the way to open that door, we are convinced is a right path, not the only path, but a right path. And so these particular plays had to do with violence and nonviolence and police brutality and drugs being introduced into the community and surveillance and power and white supremacy. And when they're put on the stage, you can't not talk about it. When those words are used in a theatrical performance that you're sitting there enjoying, you can't not talk about it then, because the film has already, right, the veil has already been stripped off. And so we will continue doing this throughout the rest of the summer. We have a couple of family nights. We have those kids that you saw earlier on the earlier slide are in our youth camp. We're preparing them to do a reading so that we get more and more families coming. And I mean, this is the dream, right? We offer childcare stipends. So if they have littles that don't get to come, we try and help out with that. But we aren't thinking about this as we're working with the underserved or the unfortunate or right? We are committed to celebrating Black culture. We are committed to bringing conversations about Japanese internment to the stage. We're committed to doing the work that's not just reading a land acknowledgement, but has conversation around land back for Indigenous folks. That's the work that we really are doing with this TCAP. That's the work that Metro is really funding. It's getting these conversations on the table, out loud. These are the ones coming up. Detroit 67 is about the riots, but not about the riots, but about the riots and a white girl showing up in a Black family. Ohio State murders. If you've not read Adrienne Kennedy's works, she's wild, and it's just really good stuff about a Black PhD student and their sociology professor. And then Cobb is about Ty Cobb and his struggle with the individual that was considered the Black Cobb and how he has to deal with his ego around that. When we say that we're a Black producing theater company, it doesn't mean that everybody in every show and every playwright that we work with or, try and produce on the stage is Black. It means that we know that our culture is in us, right? We are Blackity Black, and that informs everything that we do. So it's a fabulous process. It's a fabulous process bringing folks together for these conversations. Yeah. One of the other things I should say about the grant, about the Metro grant, is that we also use it to build audiences, right? We use this TCAP process to build audiences. So for example, the spring readings, we gave away tickets to Yohen to bring people downtown to see that particular show. And we'll do that again in the fall. We'll give away tickets to folks that register. The readings are free. TCAP Metro allows us to run these things free. And that in and of itself is stunning. Because again, theater has become an elite white thing here. And it's not. We've all always been on some kind of stage. So this is our mission. We're here to educate, to entertain, to celebrate, and not shy away from or think not necessary or appropriate to have conversations and about the stuff that's really impacting folks. This picture is of what is known as Mount Hood. The indigenous name is Y East. So this is truly a Portland picture. If I could ask anything of folks, I mean, obviously, just like we heard, there's never enough money, there's never enough time, there's never enough resource for the arts. For whatever reason, there's never enough. So yes, send us money, give us money, help us find a building, all of that's right, we'll take it. And the thing that I would ask everybody on the call to do is not look for safe conversations, but be courageous, be brave. It's 2024 and we are still having to say there are places in our country that we can't talk about race, or that race is not a thing that people are, it's the scary conversation. We have to use our minds, our hearts, our imaginations, which is what live theater brings to bear, all of those things, to make that change, to imagine a world that we don't live in yet. We've not ever in this country practiced democracy. So we can imagine it though. And if we can imagine it, then we can make it happen. And that's what Passing Art is about. So if I can ask for anything, it's that you don't shy away, that you don't look for safety, you don't look for comfort, but that you look inside for bravery and courage. And so, yeah, happy to open this up and let's chat about it.
Thank you so much, Clarice. I hear, just as a recap of everything I hear, the first thing, the really strong piece is about visibilization, which is like, to me, one of the first things of not being pushed around. You started by saying in Portland over the decades, having a place is a challenge. And even to this day, you tell us about even the challenge of actually being just a resident in art in a place, rather than actually being the owner of a place where you can share. It's still a challenge. And I heard that and then also the fact that over the years, this critical ability to talk about the issues of race and having a theater space to be able to practice talking with your own community and then other community that comes in is really, really amazing, and actually stabilizing people in the feeling of actually belonging, which you're saying, like this question of, do we even belong in this place called Oregon? I think that's a really, really interesting as well. It brought up ideas of theater of the oppressed, which Paulo Freire was very strong in talking about, that liberatory experience of being represented in place and space. And I love the idea of the fact that you said that you're collapsing this elite experience of theater and you're bringing it from these stories from underneath the rug and behind the staircase out into the open. And you're showing people, look at this beauty, look at these artists, look at this artwork, look at these stories that people don't even know about their own history and how it's being brought into Portland. And also the celebration of Black culture, the land for the indigenous, the folks that have also been pushed off the land with Japanese internment, and the fact that you need an actual place to be able to build those audiences continuously so that actually people have the opportunity maybe in the future to age in place and to love a place because it belongs to them. Very, very powerful.
You're gonna make me cry. I'm so close.
That's what I felt like hearing you. Like, I was like very, very impressed because this story, it is everywhere, but how the struggle looks in Portland is very important. And it's important for all of us to be able to understand and share in how we can come an ally to fight along with you. I think we're opening this up to anyone to ask any questions. I don't know if there's a process, Ryan, maybe that where we have questions already, or
folks who are participating can now open their video and unmute themselves, or they can ask questions in the chat, or you also continue to speak to each other.
Hi, everyone. I'll take the leap. Thank you both for a great presentation and for what placemaking, placekeeping are for the both of you, and the different ways that we can think about it as well. I appreciate that. My name's Elisa. I'm here in Portland, Oregon as well. And I actually have a question for LeJuano about, have you reached the point, this is a logistic question, about talking about like permits and stuff for the work that you're doing with the government, with all of the ideas and planning?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. The nuts and bolts of these things are the least favorite of mine. I didn't tell you much about my background, but I come from finance and private investment, and we don't like a lot of red tapey looking, bureaucratic-y type of things. And how can you run a city without either of those two things? It's impossible. So permitting. In the city of Atlanta, well, let me back up again. Most Main Street programs that you'll be aware of are municipal affiliated programs. So they will sit within a Department of Economic Development or within a development authority, or maybe county affiliated. We happen to be a private 501c3, non-municipally affiliated. So I don't even have the luxury of sitting within an actual city function. We're literally doing this outside of the city itself, and for lack of better language, dragging the city along. So I do have a partner that is the Downtown Improvement District that has often worked alongside with or in parallel or in the stead of the city of Atlanta to solve infrastructure problems. And they are my partner in guiding us through. So let's start with just the lineal space for the moment. First things we can do are get approval through our Department of Transportation and Planning to fix our sidewalks. So not completely replace, because that's a whole nother process, but repair in kind and patch and fix obviously is less expensive, and we're not so bad anyway. So we've got we had an RFP for an outside engineering firm with a landscape architect bent to bid and win on doing that repair and in kind in the sidewalk space. And that firm is directly responsible for getting the approval through the city with the with the improvement district assistance and with our guidance, with our outside landscape architects, interestingly enough, managing the creative side of this. It's really complicated. But I hope that little bit is helpful. At the same time that we get that done, we'll also get approval for things that rise vertically out of the public right of way. I should say, I did not say during the presentation that this is a strictly public right of way project at the moment. I'm not on anyone's private property. I literally just sit in the city's infrastructure between the roadway, sidewalk, and installed approved furniture on light posts and on garbage cans. The private stuff, the wrapping of the buildings and the wrapping of fencing, that sort of thing, will all happen with partners. As this main street that I represent, we are the arm of our landowning stakeholders. And so they allow me to do silly things like make murals and wrap fences and things like that. So that's how we got the Sweet Auburn cups in the fence in one of the slides you saw. I hope that's helpful. If not, keep digging, and I will keep unwinding. I promise.
Do you have any other questions, Ryan? Do you wish some of us can also share in between?
Clarice, I loved everything about your process. At the risk of sounding mildly political, in the South, it is, you know, we're now litigating against my history, interestingly enough. And so we, as an organization, very much believe in telling African-American stories about our place as often as possible, in as many media as possible, in as many ways as possible, which is why a neighborhood thought that wouldn't it make sense to brand our neighborhood African-American? So when you landed in from any direction, that pattern you saw let you know that that represented 170 years of African-American history. And then we would inform that pattern through a very strategic, very competent strategic marketing program to let you know why that pattern is meaningful to you and let you know where you've landed and why you've landed there. We're actually trying to get the city to think about all of our in-town neighborhoods that way, that as a city, as the urban core grows, every neighborhood should be able to tell its own story well. And we're hoping to strengthen that muscle for the city of Atlanta to help this neighborhood tell its story better, and then other neighborhoods do the same thing. We've all got cultural heritage to manifest and to love and to appreciate. And we're just trying to exercise that way to do it here.
Well, you know, probably the worst thing that could have happened when I very first moved to Oregon, all those many years ago, was to let me find out about Oregon's history. Because I have not let people forget that I know.
Mm-hmm.
So we are, as we so I have a, for lack of a better word, racist highway that goes through my neighborhood. And we're applying for Reconnecting Communities funds. And my first pre-development in anticipation of those funds is raising some money to hire a landscape architect, a transportation engineering firm, and a firm that specializes in equitable community engagement. And what I plan to do with those dollars is uncover, say, an historical baseline of what the neighborhood was like before the highway came in. Begin to document harm, begin to quantify it, and then inform the public, my neighborhood, back with that history. Where were we 80, 70 years ago before this thing came? What have we lost? What's the accumulated tax benefit? What's the accumulated land wealth that was lost? And then we give that history, that quantified history, back to the neighborhood. So in the stead of a Sweet Auburn Works, you know, each individual landowner, business owner, resident has the ability to articulate the history and how we want to mitigate against the negative effects of this infrastructure in our neighborhood. It's really about inform. So we spend so much time storytelling and talking about all the positive things and elucidating on some of the things that weren't so very positive, and ensuring that the community has the ability to tell its own story its own way.
Yeah, we
We-
do that with the kids as well, to get them to ask their people and to talk about, it's participatory action research, right? To get them talking about how their families got here, why they made the choice to come here, where they came from, so that they're not erased.
That's right.
We do have a question from an Elizabeth Bodler, and she asked, "Hi, as you both have started your organization from the ground up, how have you found the spirit to keep going, and how have you found your grit?" You want to, either one of you can start. Liana, do you want to start, or Clarice? Either one.
All right. So who asked that? Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, there's so many things. One, my job is to highlight my own cultural heritage and place in the South. I'm a Southern boy. I'm in a neighborhood that listens to the music that my parents and uncles used to listen to, and they highlight that in its cultural heritage remembrance. I'm in a neighborhood, my background's in private investment. I represent what used to be the second largest Black-owned insurance company in the country. And in 1905, it was a roll-up. It was a literal, almost a leverage buyout of 7 different insurance companies into that large insurance company. It's just fascinating to me. I represent the first Black-owned radio station in the country, the first successful daily Black-owned newspaper in the country. All those things are very personal and meaningful to me. But then, as Clarice and I were just sort of sharing, there's a healthy amount of righteous indignation that keeps me awake every day, saying, there's no way I'm not going to do this without a fight. I'm not going to help my landowning stakeholders. I should add that I think it's very incredibly important. Of the 40 acres that represent this historic district, more than half are still owned by African-American entities, individuals, businesses. So it's a Black-owned, Black-occupied, Black-controlled area. Of course, it means we have a dearth of resources, but it also means that we're still capable of charting our own path. And that inspires me every day to help ensure that this group of owners and institutions and individuals have the ability to do that. That's me personally. Clarice, I'm dying to hear yours.
I would say you probably have more resources than Carter's Got Little Liver Pills, right? Just in the things you named, whether it's dollars, that's a different story. As I really always like to say, I'm old. So I've been at this since I was a teenager. And, I grew up in Philly. And so I knew how to fight the fight. We were trained to resist. We had the great good fortune of having both the Panthers and the Nation of Islam on every corner. So all of that has stuck with me. It's interesting, Elizabeth, because people do ask quite often, how do you not just want to give up? And sometimes I have wanted to give up because it's exhausting. And I can't, because the most important people to me on the planet are children. And I, in good conscience, cannot stop doing a thing if it means that the kids are the ones that will have to, once again, fight this fight. There's just no way. There's just no way. So I'm really fortunate that I get to go back and forth between, street Philly and Portland, Oregon. Because when I get too angry, I can come back to Portland and breathe good air. And when I get too lazy, I can go to Philly and I remember. And there's nothing else to do but to do it. What are we gonna do? We're gonna sit around and just allow it to continue? No. And if I'm the last person fighting this fight, I will be the last person fighting this fight. Because that's all it is.
There was another question here from a Jeff Matsuto who asked, does the kind of Black ownership even exist in Portland? And that was being described by Yano.
I do think that some folks have held out. Jeff, I do think that some folks have held out. I think that it was really hard. There is a pretty significant movement to reclaim Albina, that area where that neighborhood. You know, the freeway went through, the hospitals went up, all of that happened here too. And there are young people who are in their 20s and 30s who are not having it. And it's great. So there are bits and pieces. And for the most part, you know, when I first moved to Portland, to Oregon, there was a sign at the border that said Californians are not welcome here. And I think it did a lot to keep it very much intact. That sign isn't there anymore. And so I think that capitalism is a very sweet mistress.
So you guys both have described sort of, I'm just curious if you had like one thing to share with people about actually like what your idea for that future. And I loved how Clarice spoke about that imaginary, or the having a space to imagine the world, that future differently. And just as folks are talking about these questions, I'm just curious, what would you guys' future, share a little bit about the future you would like to see? Either.
I mean, I would like what I think everybody would like. I don't think that we have ultimately different interests. I want a place where people are not hungry and people can read whatever they want to read, and kids can play outside, and not just because they live in the suburbs, and that people who choose to live on the land can live on the land, and people who choose to live in structures can live in structures. And that at night when kids go to sleep, they're not scared. And those are the stories that then we start telling.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I can't add anything to that. If I think we all know that some bit of human nature makes those challenging, Clarice, and I think what I would want is for communities, individuals, neighborhoods to have the ability to chart that course when they want it, on the terms they want it. We all do want the same thing. I tell people all the time, every neighborhood in Atlanta wants to be the best neighborhood in Atlanta. And you've described why that is eloquently. So wouldn't it be great if we had the opportunity to do that?
Thank you for your work.
Thank you all for sharing with us today. I'm so excited, and maybe there will be more that comes out afterwards. And I look forward to our next conversation. I hope you guys are able, because we're going to keep building on this. We have 2 more to come, and I am so impressed by this first one. It's very deepening and it's very humbling. And it gives us a lot to think about. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dana and Metro, for also hosting this conversation.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here, and I hope you can join us tomorrow and or Thursday. Thanks, LeJuano. Thanks, Clarice. Really indebted to you.
It's a lot of fun.
It was terrific. Luana, I'm gonna call you up.